Mr. Costa, you recently made a visit to Africa. Could you tell us something about your observations from that visit?
The mission was meant to review progress being made in West Africa in fighting one of the latest tragedies in that part of the world, namely the aggression to Africa by Latin American drug traffickers. We launched the alarm 4 or 5 years ago. Unfortunately, the international community was not proactive. We lost a couple of years. But as of late, mobilization of law enforcement officers, development assistance, our own work in helping the judicial system, all of that has fortified West Africa to some extent, and therefore has reduced the threat, which remain, however, looming at the horizon, still very severe.
Now, the Latin American organized crime gangs are obviously pushing a lot of cocaine through Africa. Would that be true?
Yes, it's exactly the alarm. It's about cocaine trafficking from across the Atlantic, from Andean countries, to some extent also from Brazil, then delivered on the ground in West Africa, either on the shore of the West African countries or even inland, and some of the landlocked countries are also suffering for the attack, Mali, for example, and then, of course, the drugs are packaged and transshipped to Europe. This has been a very serious problem, not only because there is obviously organized crime involved, but because the local foot soldiers involved in assisting international mafias in this business are paid in drugs which are then mostly sold locally. So the trafficking is generating a progressively serious drug addiction problem. And third and final is that drugs very often are traded for other illicit merchandise, for example, arms. And so we see a flourishing industry there of barter between one illegal drug, cocaine, for some other illegal activities, for example, armed trafficking, smuggling of migrants, smuggling of people. So all of this is really creating chaos, in addition, of course, to the question of corruption. Money is being used to corrupt officials, to buy economic assets, but also political assets, by elections, by people close to power.
You have been to the Security Council as well, I think twice, fairly recently.
On this very matter, on the 8th of December, namely 3 months ago, and again on the more general issues related to this illicit sort of trafficking in 24th of February, but not to discuss the drug trafficking. The Security Council of the United Nations, very noble institution as it is, it's about a threat to security, and indeed we have noted, we have examined and reported about the threat to security and stability in some parts of the world coming from organized crime, coming from drug trafficking, and the Council has taken the matter at heart, and I'm very pleased for that.
Now, many people, are pointing to the fact that there is a connection between terrorism and drug trafficking. Could you comment on that?
We have seen clear linkages historically, almost everywhere and anywhere at any time the terrorist cells have developed, that they funded themselves, certainly with illegal activities, to some extent, in some cases, also by the diaspora of people supporting them ideologically or religiously. But that being said, by and large, most of the terrorist groups, if not all of the terrorist groups you may be familiar with or that may come up in your mind, even those who operated 10, 15, 20 years ago, funding themselves by means of trafficking in narcotics. Now, as of late, we have seen, obviously, the same problem with modern form of very aggressive, perhaps even international terrorists in West Asia, namely in Afghanistan and neighboring countries, certainly in the Andean countries. I'm referring to the activities of the FARC groups and the ELN and the Autodefensa, all of them funding themselves via drug trafficking. Now, as of late, we have been looking at the role of insurgents and terrorists in Africa itself, in West Africa itself. Not so much along the coast, because guns have been silenced in the regions of the coast, like Ivory Coast, like Sierra Leone, like Liberia, but we see problems brooding further east and northeast, namely the borders at the border between some of the Saharan countries, Mali, Niger on the one hand, and the Maghreb country like Libya, like Algeria, like Morocco, like Mauritania. So we do see there again evidence that drug trafficking is feeding insurgency and terrorism.
Another issue that has been heavily debated and is debated more or less every day is the issue about cannabis, and more specifically so-called medical marijuana. What are your views on this? Is this something that is going to be accepted, do you think, internationally? Should we fight against it? Or, well, what are your views on the so-called medical marijuana?
Well, the member states have to say the last word, and not certainly the executive director. We obviously welcome any and all efforts by the medical profession to use all form of medication coming from whatever botanical or chemical ingredient. Let us not forget that the foremost analgesic in the world, namely morphine, is coming from a controlled substance, namely opium. If anything can be derived from marijuana, as long as it is done within the medical profession, within the pharmaceutical industry, I think it's more than welcome.